What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with our resident football coach, Tim Hyde, to talk about some of the recent Notre Dame coaching news. Now, the big thing is Harry Hiestand. It's not official yet from Notre Dame, but several outlets, including blueandgold.com, hearing that this is the expected hire. Just kind of have some dotted I's and crossed T's on some forms. I believe that's basically all that's left to figure out here. Notre Dame fans, go ahead and hit thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not yet. Go to blueandgold.com for all coverage of Fighting Irish. But Tim, your first reaction when you started seeing reports that Harry Hiestand was going to return?
My first reaction was almost like what Mike McGlinchey posted on Twitter, like, welcome back to the family, welcome back to home. And great offensive line coach from 12 to 17, won the Joe Moore Award. Some feel in 17, some feel 2015 is his best offensive line. It was, they were really good. I mean, he coached the heck out of some big time football players, a lot of high draft choices, and guys he recruited, obviously, on the 2020 offensive line were his recruits that stuck around and obviously led them to the playoff run there. So, heck of football close. It was awesome that he's coming back, especially when, once you learn that, Jeff Quinn is not going to come back. And I think a little hidden thing in him coming back is this was Tommy Rees's offensive line coach in 2012 and 2013. And at the end of 2013, who was the bowl game MVP other than left tackle Zach Martin? When does an offensive lineman ever win a bowl game MVP? So a lot of great memories with Harry, and it's great that Tommy Rees is getting his choice of the guy that he wants to be in that room molding this offensive line during this Marcus Freeman era.
Yeah, he coached this guy named Quentin Nelson. I think that was I think that's a good little notch under his belt, right, Tim?
Oh, I mean, just look at the guys. Obviously, the first two that come to mind obviously were recruited before him, but he got him to start him, and that's Zach Martin and Chris Watt on the left side, two great football players. And then you got Ronnie Stanley, at left tackle, and then obviously you go straight to, Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey. You got, Nick Martin, who's been in the NFL for a long time. You got a bunch of guys that are all, by the way, in the top 100 picks of the NFL. Even Hainsey, even
Kramer?
Eichenberg, Banks. Those were Harry Hiestand recruits, all picked in the top 100 of the NFL. Then you go, draft. Guys that are still playing, free agents. Sam Mestifer, Alex Bars. He recruited and coached Tommy Kramer in 16, 17. So there's so many guys that have been around. Braxton Cave was on those early O-lines, played in the NFL for a few years. So that mantra of O-line Notre Dame's always been known for offensive linemen, great ones, but it just blew up under Harry. And it's going to continue because he's got a stacked room to walk into. And I think those guys should be highly excited because all Harry has to do is show the NFL contracts that have played for under him, and guys should be tickled pink to get ready to go play some good football for Notre Dame.
We'll get into the current offensive line room that he's going to be taking over, but I want to talk first about the X's and O's with him. What should Notre Dame fans expect with Harry Hiestand? You just talked about his accolades as a coach and all the guys that he's had. I know you were watching some film of Notre Dame's offense when he was the position coach there. So what do you expect to change and be different here?
You know what? When you go back, because you're like, oh, O-line play, everyone, works the same thing, the same fundamentals and whatnot. I'll tell you what, it really jumped off the page. I went back and watched the OU game from 2012, and I watched the Georgia game from 2017 and watched a little bit of the Michigan game from 2011 before the defense got involved in that one. So it was different as in I thought they played much more explosiveness. I thought they were knee benders. I went back and watched a couple videos from Lou Samoji back in the heyday, in the early years when Harry was there, and Lou was asking him questions about fundamentals, and Harry constantly mentioned he wants knee benders. He was talking about players. Oh yeah, so-and-so is bending their knees, getting lower in their stances. I put on the OU film. and everybody was low as could be. I'm talking flat backs firing off the line, double teams like we really haven't seen much of lately. And it was fascinating to watch the fundamentals, really the pad level and the striking ability, and the way they double team guys just looked completely different than what we've seen the last couple of years. And it was nice to go back and watch some old film of what Harry's going to bring back. More importantly, the tree that Harry comes from is that Joe Moore tree. He's been around Joe. He learned from Joe Moore back in the heyday when he was a young coach. And you could just see it in those fundamentals, taking those old Lou Holtz offensive lines to what the way Harry coached here during his tenure at Notre Dame during his first run.
Yeah, you like we talked about it a minute ago. I mean, Jeff Quinn gets a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
My shtick on Quinn has always been, I'll let others talk about him as a actual coach, but him as a recruiter, Quinn, worked his ass off and obviously set this room up for a lot of success. I mean, the 2021 class with Fisher and Alt and Spindler extremely strong. This 2022 group coming in that he recruited just as good. I mean, just how good does the future of the offensive line look?
It looks outstanding as long as these young men in that room sit there and embrace Harry. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if those old linemen from Harry's days during that first period, you know, start talking to these guys, especially Tommy Reese could walk in the room. Harry obviously walk in the room, get on FaceTime and say, talk to these guys, listen to me. He is an old school coach that's always been out there about, Harry Hiestand. And the room is stacked. There's no doubt about it. These guys need to embrace Harry, the way he coaches, the success that he coaches. I mean, he's been with the Chicago Bears 2 different occasions. He's coached in the Super Bowl. His center, Olin Krantz, is probably going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame someday, one of the best centers in NFL history. So he's got a great track record. And guys like Fisher, if he wants you to play the right side, play the right side. Who's to say? I'm just throwing scenarios out like Tosh Baker, we want you at left tackle. Joe Alt, maybe you're the left guard. Just throwing things out, whatever it is. Embrace what Harry has to say. Listen to him. Trust him. Because that is one thing he did a lot of at Notre Dame was move guys around. Mike McGlinchey played right tackle, left tackle. Alex Bars played every position but center at Notre Dame. So these guys listen to him, embrace him, trust him. And Notre Dame's offensive line is just going to be one of a kind the next couple of years with these guys.
Yeah, Notre Dame fans, sign up for just $1 for your first year premium access over at blueandgold.com. We've moved our home from the Rivals Network to the Next Gen on 3 Sports team. So blueandgold.com, again, just $1 for the first year. That gets you all of the recruiting coverage, team coverage, community at blueandgold.com on our loose emoji board. Definitely check that out. Wanted to touch on something real quick before we move on to the new special teams coordinators that, the knock on Harry Hiestand. And I mean, this is very well established that he does not like recruiting. That is just not his cup of tea. But I'll add that since he was the Notre Dame offensive line coach, recruiting's changed a lot. Analysts, graduate assistants, director of recruiting, all those kind of roles are very easily able to contact recruits. So Harry doesn't need, and this was the same as Clark Lee, even Brian Kelly, those guys didn't do a ton of day-to-day recruiting and still had success. I think if Tommy Reese grinds on the recruiting trail, guys like Dre Brown, Chad Bowden, if they bring in Chris Watt, who you mentioned earlier, former Notre Dame offensive lineman, to recruit. Harry doesn't have to do all the day-to-day contact, but he can, just sit down with the recruit when they come on a visit or when Harry goes on the road during those periods. That's when he can shine, but he doesn't have to text and FaceTime kids all day long, which probably is not what he enjoys. But so new special teams coordinator Brian Polian, a longtime Notre Dame coach. He's gone to LSU with Brian Kelly. But the Fighting Irish bring in Brian Mason, who has Indiana ties, hometown's Zionsville, and he's coached at Purdue for a couple years with Marcus Freeman. He was a grad assistant for a couple years at Ohio State, and then after the Ohio State stint, has been with Cincinnati since 2017. So obviously worked there with Freeman, Mickens, Chad Bowden, director of
Mhm.
recruiting in Notre Dame. So Mason has plenty of recruiting experience, special teams coordinator. Um, Quick thoughts on Notre Dame bringing in Brian Mason. That news also not official yet, but been widely reported.
Well, exciting because that's one of the first names that was thrown out there because that's one of Marcus Freeman's good buddies. He's, whenever people get a head coaching hire, they always reach out to people they've worked with, friends that they've done. Obviously, Marcus Freeman's kept a handful of the guys that he's worked with this first year, but he went out and one of the first guys he wanted was Mason, who's one of the top special teams coaches out there in the country. He's coached with them at Purdue, obviously, and then Mason's got those Urban Meyer tires at Ohio State. So you go back to that Ohio State tree that Marcus Freeman has. It's a great first hire because it's someone he knows. He's someone he's really close with, a very good, close personal friend. Just like Tommy Rees went out and got his old line coach from when he played at Notre Dame. And another little hidden, hires James Laurinaitis,
Yeah. Oh
who's
yeah.
Marcus Freeman's best friend from their Ohio State days, playing for national championships a few days ago. So there's another Buckeye, Ohio State. I know Notre Dame's got with Ohio State, Michigan. We don't like to talk about those guys, but Marcus Freeman's tenure at Ohio State, he won a lot of games under Jim Tressel. And Jim Tressel's got obviously a great reputation of winning, producing players, producing coaches as well. So he's got that Tressel tree. He's bringing in a few of his close friends that he trusts to join this Notre Dame football office. And it's awesome what he's doing right now in this early stages with a few more big hires to go.
Yeah, we don't know the exact details of James Laurinaitis' role at Notre Dame, but expecting to be some kind of analyst
Mm-hmm.
position. And then Dell Alexander, we've reported, is not returning to Notre Dame, so the Fighting Irish will need a new receivers coach. And yeah, defensive coordinator. Someone will
Let's
replace
see.
Marcus Freeman, and I would assume it would be a DC/linebackers coach. So that's still around the corner. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. Go to blueandgold.com again. $1 for 1 year of premium access. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for Mike Singer and Tim Hyde, we will catch you guys next time.